ayahuasca, my iboga experience felt surprisingly calm. Before going, I had heard over and over that iboga was supposed to be the more powerful medicine because it lasts anywhere from 48 to 72 hours, while ayahuasca ceremonies are only about 6 hours each. But for me, ayahuasca was far more intense. Looking back, I think that's because ayahuasca was the first time I had ever done anything like this to truly clean out my system. There was so much emotional junk, so much heaviness, so much that I had been carrying for years. The experience was exhausting, overwhelming, and incredibly intense because there was simply so much to release. With iboga, I didn't experience that same level of intensity. It felt much calmer. Interestingly, I didn't purge during either iboga ceremony, even though many of the people around me did. At first, I thought I might vomit because I felt extremely dizzy. It was more like being very tipsy or off balance. It wasn't the same kind of purge I experienced with ayahuasca. During ayahuasca, it was as if my body was doing it for me. Afterward, I reflected on my ayahuasca ceremony and realized something I hadn't noticed before. Even though I spent 2/3 of the ceremony vomiting, I never actually vomited the medicine itself. It wasn't until I finally reached my limit and said, "I'm done, I can't do this anymore," that the brew came out. It wasn't an ordinary purge. It felt like a juicer squeezing every last drop out of my body and shooting it out of my mouth. It didn't feel humanly possible. The first iboga ceremony began around the fire. We sat together talking while everyone slowly took their medicine. As the effects began, people quietly returned to the mat to lie down. One other woman and I were among the last to go. The very first thing I heard after lying down was the man beside me purging. The sound was terrifying. It wasn't just loud, it felt like I could sense everything that was coming out of him. It was more like the medicine pulled me into an inner vision of his suffering. I could almost feel his agony, hopelessness, helplessness, and everything he had been carrying inside himself. Hearing him immediately pulled me back into memories of my own ayahuasca experience. I remembered how much pain I had been carrying inside my own body. I began seeing people vomiting, carrying the same lit up. It made me understand why some shamans describe people as having demons inside them. I don't think they literally mean demons. To me, it felt like all the emotional weight we've accumulated throughout our lives. Our fear, shame, grief, trauma, and pain. Those things become so heavy that they begin dragging us through life. I could see how someone might describe that heaviness as something dark living inside us, even though it's really something we've been carrying all along. As I watched these visions unfold, another feeling surfaced. It was strangely familiar, even though I couldn't place it. It felt like something I had experienced as a child. It looked like a bed that was spinning. It felt fear to get close to it. At the same time, I felt drawn toward it. Then the visions changed again. I started watching images connect to one another like an endless chain reaction. Someone might trip while walking down the street, knocking over an object. That object would shoot toward the ceiling, crash through the roof, knock something else loose, and suddenly giant letters would appear. Those letters would transform someone into a bird, which were another impossible event. Everything flowed effortlessly from one image into the next. Then, it simply stopped. It felt almost like Google's disconnected dinosaur page. Everything stopped. Thinking I hadn't taken enough medicine, I asked for 2 more pills. For the rest of the night, it was just flat, and I drifted in and out of consciousness until morning. After my first ceremony, I had spoken with others about their experiences. They mentioned that iboga brought up their fear. It made sense. I realized I had been terrified that everyone else was having profound healing experiences, while I was somehow being left behind. I had traveled all this way hoping to heal, to ask my questions, to find answers. That fear of being left behind, and I was the only one without it. The second ceremony was even more fleeing. We all took the medicine much faster than the first. I felt dizzy early, but I wasn't having visions. More than anything, I felt anxious. I didn't want to be around anyone. The feeling reminded me of the day after ayahuasca, when all I wanted was to be alone, because being around people felt overwhelming. We were sitting around the fire, listening to Levi speak. I had mostly been zoning out until he said something that instantly caught my attention. He talked about how someone we feel connected to, but eventually we can push away love. The moment he said those words, it felt as though everyone else disappeared. It felt like that message was aimed directly at me. I felt anxious. I soon lied down. I wasn't in the experience. I realized quickly that Iboga required surrender like Bufo. Ayahuasca had pulled me in without me doing anything. I didn't have to try. Iboga was different. I realized I was still thinking. Whenever I began slipping into the medicine, it almost felt like I stopped breathing. Then I'd suddenly inhale, become aware of my body again, and immediately pop back out of the experience. It was almost as if I couldn't let myself completely let go. One of the most noticeable visions showed up so casually. I was like, why was Kid in here? It took me a couple of seconds to realize he was here. The memory opened up like a folder. I opened it and unfolded into the actually situation. I saw myself sitting in a car with him I had been completely infatuated with. I had written down everything I wanted to tell him about how I felt. I was talking around them, trying to hint at them without ever saying what I truly meant. I felt I was overwhelming him. The harder I tried to make him understand me, the more I was pushing him away. I believed he thought I was crazy, so I gave up. I stopped expressing myself. I convinced myself there was no point because he didn't care. That memory wasn't just about him. It was showing me a pattern that had followed me throughout my life. And that's why Houston was there. I felt a connection with him because there were moments where I thought, oh, he might actually understand me. I felt like I could talk to him about anything. Part of me wanted to spend more time with him, talk with him, understand him more, and become a better friend. But at the same time, I knew everything would end in a week. That thought created so much anxiety in me. Was it even worth putting energy into building a connection with someone when I already knew it would come to an end? Instead of taking the risk, I left him alone. Now, I feel regret because I didn't even try. I didn't give myself a chance. I was so caught up in overthinking that I never expressed how I felt. On the last day, he was busy talking to people and making plans. I wanted to talk to him, but I couldn't find the right moment. I wanted some alone time with him, but it never happened. Then I found out he was leaving to a different location and wouldn't be going to the airport with the rest of us. I thought maybe I could at least talk to him there, but even that opportunity disappeared. I think the medicine brought this pattern to the surface. During the second ceremony, I was stuck in a thinking loop for almost the entire night. I couldn't sleep because I was trapped inside my own thoughts. When I woke up, I felt this huge sense of relief because I realized how much I had been stuck in my head. The medicine forced me to experience my overthinking at such an extreme level. I realized I overthink because I'm afraid of making the wrong choice and getting hurt. Instead of acting in this reality, I try to predict every possible outcome first. But by the time I finally decide what to do, the moment has already passed. By the time I thought, okay, I'm just going to talk to him, it was already 2 weeks later after the retreat. He was long gone. During those 2 weeks, I was traveling. There was this quiet feeling in the background telling me, just tell him. It brought up sadness, loneliness, and loss. Eventually, I thought, screw it. I'm going to stop overthinking and just tell him. So I reached out. It felt like everything was trying to stop me at first. Levi didn't reply. Then I reached out to Dina, who eventually helped me get his email. I emailed him about doing a video call and did my best to be honest but witty. But now it's been 2 days and he hasn't replied. That part hurts. It makes me wonder, am I not important enough? But then another part of me asks, how can I expect so much from someone I only knew for 1 week? He was there for his own reasons. For me, his presence meant something different. He represented an opportunity to finally express how I feel about somebody and show them that they matter to me. When I was younger, I had to become independent very early. I remember being left home alone at 6 years old. At the time, the fear was quickly replaced by how proud that my parents saw me as mature. But underneath, there was a child who was scared and needed someone to acknowledge, "Home alone is terrifying. You shouldn't have to feel abandoned." I never allowed myself to fully feel that fear and loneliness, so it showed up later as intense attachment whenever someone made me feel seen and understood. My first reaction was, how can I expect this much from someone I only knew for a week? But that logic was also blocking me from feeling the deeper emotion underneath: anger. The anger was asking, why am I not good enough? Why doesn't he reply? Why does it feel like I'm being left behind? I realized I didn't allow myself to feel angry because I judged those emotions as unreasonable. And no one will love me if I throw a temper tantrum. But in reality, him not replying maybe has nothing to do with me. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's traveling. There's reasons that I can't possibly know. His actions have nothing to do with me. But I'm inside my head overthinking all the possible scenario. His reaction showed me there is still an old wound asking to be healed.